ESBR Boxing We're about myself and Paul Kelly. That means one thing and one thing only. We're here in preview mode. And we're here previewing an intriguing fight actually is taking place in the Co-op Live Arena in Manchester between two names that are well known in British boxing circles. But before we get into that, I'd like to say like and subscribe to the channel. Obviously, all your boxing needs under one roof, but engage with the content. Let us know what you think, and we'll use that to refine and improve our offering going forward. But Paul, thank you very much for joining me. We are here, as I said, previewing a fight between two guys that are well known in Britain: Zelfa Barrett versus Jazza Dickens. Paul, we're down to the super featherweight division here for this one. A very interesting fight, an intriguing fight. Obviously, both guys well known. Barrett's actually got a longer record, I think, than some has given credit for. 31-2 sort of record, quite surprised. Actually, been around almost longer than you kind of think. Obviously, Jazza Dickens as well has had a kind of a stop-start career as well, hasn't he? I think it's fair to say as well. But if we go to the focus, really, I suppose about Zelfa Barrett first. 31 years old now. I suppose the question I want to ask you really is that, there's been different periods in his career where he seemed to really have momentum. There's real sort of talk about, seizing a world title, getting up at world title honors, competing for a world title and becoming a world champion. The question I want to ask you is, do you think that he climbs that summit? Paul obviously lost to Rakhimov, but do you think he climbs that summit again and becomes a world champion? Or do you not see it for Zelfa Barrett?
Thanks, mate. Yeah, this is an interesting one for me. I think as good as Zelfa Barrett is, I can't foresee him winning a world title. To be honest with you, mate, I think, and that's no discredit to him. I think he's a great fighter. I just can't see him winning, making that step to winning that world title. To be honest, when you look at that super feather scene, I mean, you obviously got Kakachi still there at the minute. Lee Wood's now hanging
Your boys
about.
there.
Yeah, Lee Wood's up there now as well. Those two names kind of for UK and Irish fans, like you're backing both of them to beat Zelfa Barrett for starters. Then you look at you kind of look at the wider division, and all the world champions at 130 pounds, and just can't at the minute I can't see Zelfa Barrett beating any of them, to be honest. That's not, as I said, I don't want to discredit him at all. I think like maybe on his day against the right opponent, he probably could. He was close against Rakhimov, did have him hurt before obviously getting stopped himself, but it's a tough ask, isn't it? Making that next step, grabbing that world title, it's not easy. Yeah, for me, mate, I'm gonna lean towards no.
Yeah, I actually can't disagree, Paul. I think I found myself about it, but I also think I kind of agree with you. I think also if he's going to do it, probably needs to do it in the next couple of years. And you look at the division and the sort of status of the division currently. I just don't see the names who necessarily being up against obviously the current champions, even the guys ranked higher in the division, and favouring him in those fights. Frankly, not to say, like you say, it's not to say he couldn't if he somehow gets another opportunity and puts in a sort of a career best performance. But I think it's really unlikely, to be honest with you. And I actually on the side of no, as you have as well, unfortunately. But let's touch in a little bit actually on Jazza Dickens, because Jazza Dickens is obviously, again, a guy who well known British boxing circles. 5 losses, 4 KO stoppages on those losses, but 34 wins. Some great wins on that kind of record as well. I mean, your man's on there, Lee Wood. Obviously, obviously the loss to Galahad is obviously well known as well. And again, I suppose for him, he's obviously older than himself, about just by 33 years old. Seems to look a lot older than 33 years old, but is apparently 33 years old. But the question for you, really, Paul, is like I said, with those 5 losses, with those 4 KOs on those losses column, do you see another loss here being the end of the road for Jazza Dickens? Do you see that as being retirement, or do you think maybe have one or two more sort of go out with a victory, or do you think that should be it for him?
I can see the argument, particularly if he was to lose via stoppage. That would be 6 defeats, 5 of which by knockout. As you mentioned, he's not old at all at 33, but this is what his 40th professional fight. He's he's probably a few miles on the clock with those fights. Like that Galahad one, the second Galahad fight. Like I know a lot of people thought he maybe could have upset Galahad going into that, but like he took quite a lot of punishment there. He took quite a lot of punishment in that fight before getting stopped. I mean, yeah, it probably doesn't have the best effect on you going down the line, but I still think he has a lot to give. Jazza Dickens. I mean, maybe it kind of seems to enjoy fighting over in the United Arab Emirates of late, doesn't he? But he's back in Manchester here. I think this fight will tell us a lot about that. I mean, if he loses and loses badly, I think where do you go? Um, Particularly if he still has world title ambition. But equally, if it's a competitive fight, or even if he loses on points, doesn't get stopped. Who am I to sit here and tell Jazza Dickens to hang the gloves up? To be honest, mate, I can see the argument, but No, for me, I think he still does have a lot to give, unless he does get stopped in a bad way, which I mean, obviously, I hope doesn't happen. But yeah, I will not retire him just yet. I'll not go full McKendry just right now.
Yeah, I think I agree with you actually. I think despite looking older than 33, and I'm guilty of similar myself. I'm not 33 though, but I think yeah, you could sit there and I agree with you. And if he gets stopped and stopped badly, then possibly. If he gets stopped early, if he has a really sort of brutal stoppage, you kind of agree with it. But equally, I feel like he's kind of a very good fighter against opposition at a certain level. So I feel like he still have a lot to give. And there's other names sort of down in that division or around that division, even from a British interest. Jordan Gill kicking around other sort of names like that as well. So he could have a kind of fight in and around there, another sort of biggish night. When we come through that one, have a sort of victory there as well. So yeah, I think there are still fights out there for him. But again, I think if you lose here as well, it's a case of just kind of maybe you're fighting for purses or you're fighting as a kind of bit of a gatekeeper role, really, rather than kind of obviously having your own aspirations to ascend the division. But Paul, we are here at prediction time. Not going to go first this time because, frankly, this is quite a close fight in my mind. And I want to hear what you're going to say first. We haven't spoken about it off camera. So, Paul, who wins this one? Barrett versus Jazza Dickens. Who wins and how, Paul?
Yeah, I'm finding this one difficult to predict as well. What's making me lean towards Zelfa Barrett is his performance against Jordan Gill last time out. As I mentioned, I was at ringside for Jordan Gill's performance against Michael Conlan, career best display there. And I was quite big on Jordan Gill beating Zelfa Barrett then in the fight after that. But Barrett impressed me that night. Obviously ended up getting the stoppage. I could see something similar happening here. I like very similar, a late stoppage in favor of Zelfa Barrett. That's probably where I'm at now. But I think it'll be competitive because Jazza Dickens would argue is maybe the superior boxer of the two.
Yeah, I think interesting you say that because I was leaning slightly towards Zelfa Barrett myself. And I'm going to go and stick with Zelfa Barrett because it feels like you've validated that decision. But I actually think I might go points, but I can actually agree with you. I do think that if a late stoppage happens, it's perfectly plausible and could well happen as well. So I'm going to go Zelfa Barrett, but I think points for me. You're obviously going late stoppage in the fight. But I think I think it'll be close early on. I do believe that, and like you say, Jess Dickens arguably is a better technical boxer out of the two of them. But I just feel like Zelfa Barrett kind of showed against Jordan Gill. I had Jordan Gill winning that fight as well, to be honest with you. Showed that he still had enough left to sort of get it done, and also Kaz does carry in some ways deceiving power, I think, to be honest with you. So I think the stoppage could definitely happen. But guys, let us know what you think to this fight, whether you agree with us both, whether you think Barrett, whether you think Jazza can roll it back and beat him here. Also, I suppose whether Dickens should retire, who he could fight next, and also whether you think Zelfa can win a world title. Like and subscribe to the channel, as we said at the top of the video. Paul, thank you very much for joining me. And as always, guys, thank you for watching.
Cheers, mate. All the best.